Both of you have worked in the Treasury. Both of you have seen in Parliament spending reviews, government trying to get some good news out, investing in local transport, free school meals for more children, but against the background of actually what's going to be still pretty painful, difficult announcements for lots of departments next week.
Well, look, I think that the free school meals announcement is a classic political move. I hate to be cynical about it, but I've seen governments do this before. The government took a battering on winter fuel payments, let's face that. So they've got to come up with something that is going to reactivate their base, which is going to motivate their troops. And I think this policy is a good one for them to try and reassert, the Labour values, which they got shredded on by announcing that they were going to withdraw winter fuel.
Although the problem, Jonathan, is that actually lots of Labour MPs, the trade unions, they don't want it to be for some children. They actually want free school meals to be, as it is in London, free for every kid. All children in primary schools, which I think is only a third we're talking about here.
I mean, you'll always get that. You'll always have people saying, look, let's go further, let's have more. But this is a good policy. We know there are so many kids who are growing up in poverty, who are at school with empty tummies, not able to concentrate on their work. I think it's a really good policy, and it's exactly why someone like me is a Labour... I'm a Labour politician, or ex-Labour politician. This is why I want to see a Labour government to do policies like this. They've got to go further, in my view, on things like child poverty. They've got to look at the benefit system and all these complicated restrictions in the benefit systems, like something like the two-child cap that we talked about before. But this is a good thing, and I think there'll be a lot of Labour supporters across the country who will be pleased at this.
I mean, nobody's against more children getting fed that need it, are they? I don't think anybody would stand on that platform. The problem is the money and and how it's best allocated. So the IFS say that actually this is going to cost about £1 billion in today's prices and benefit 1.7 million children, whereas, as you just referenced, lifting the two-child cap benefit would be a more efficient way of spending money. And, of course, this area is not the only area asking for cash.
But I think Jonathan's response actually reinforces what I said. I think this is a good political announcement because they've shredded so much goodwill on the winter fuel.
But that's tough on politicians, isn't it? Because if they make a good political announcement, then that's good. And if they make a bad one, that's why they can't win. They're just making a good policy.
There's always a context. There's always a context. And you said yourself that this is against the backdrop of very tight public finances. And I think they needed a political win, and that's what they're trying to do.
I mean, it's not just about policy, though.
But it's not just about the politics, though. It is a good thing for the country if children are getting a good hot meal in school, which means they're not hungry, it means they can focus on their learning. I mean, I strongly believe, it's a bit of a cliche to say it, but I genuinely believe that investing in children is one of the best things you can do for the future of the country.
No, that makes sense. But I just think, I mean, I hate to be cynical, as I said, but there is a political context here, and that's all I'm referring to.
I don't think you hate to be cynical. I mean, I think you've just been a bit cynical, and that's fine.
No, but I mean, I've been there. I know what the calculus is.
Well, talking of being there, actually, Rachel Reeves is now as unpopular officially as you were. I'm sorry about that. And that's during the high.
Look how you've turned around your reputation by having me.
With some long yards.
I can't work out whether you're talking down Rachel Reeves or talking about Party.
I'm just spreading information, Ed. I'm
was a poll last
I'm making no personal comment at all. But, I mean, you do know how she feels, because you're there in the midst of that unpopularity.
I think what she will be trying to do is to stick to her game plan and not be buffeted around. But the problem is you've got real life media, there's an immense political pressure. I'm amazed. The last poll I saw, Labour on 22%, which is where we were after the mini-budget.
So 51% of voters think Miss Reeves is doing a bad job. And that's as bad as you at the height of that awful... I'm so sorry.
No, not at all, not at all. I get that.
It's lovely to have me back.
Ken Clark came
at the height of the mini-budget blow-up,
Right. But you've got to stick to... I mean, what I don't think
advice would you give her, though?
I think she's just...
Your advice would be stay close to the Prime Minister.
Well, stay very close to the Prime Minister.
Keep in close touch with the Prime Minister.
Every 10 minutes.
Don't take phone calls if you don't know why they're ringing.
So the other thing, don't fly to America if you can afford it.
We should explain, that this was... you went out to the international meetings.
That's right.
Landed.
IMF.
Liz Truss rang you.
So the second day.
And she said it was all your fault.
It was a three-day conference. I landed. The first day, not a bat squeak. Second day, urgent phone calls from number 10, which I tried to ignore because I knew what they were going to say. And then in the end...
I love your honesty. That's what we all do with our bosses, isn't it?
yeah, my mobile phone.
Liz Truss thought, you know, I've solved the problem.
Yeah, that was...
Kwasi's gone.
Kwasi's gone.
Plain sailing from now. She
fine.
lasted another...
6 days. Well, she announced 6 days later that she was going to resign.
Yeah.
There's one thing being thrown under the bus, but, you know, being thrown under the bus, then the person being, you know, who threw you under the bus is mowed by the next bus, run down, is not a great feeling.
Rachel Reeves will carry on as Chancellor. That's my...
He won't, because he won't last 2 months if he gets rid of us.
Although this, I mean, you know, we've been talking about the winter fuel announcement for a year.
For the whole year.
We've now been talking, you know, to hear about the U-turn for, I think, into our 3rd week.
Yeah.
And we still don't know what it is.
No, it's messy, isn't it? It's so messy.
Very messy.
And, you know, we recognise, I think, pretty much straight away, that this winter fuel payment decision was going to be incredibly unpopular. We've both, in our different sort of political lives, been in governments when governments have made decisions which anger pensioners, and we all know, as politicians, when we go campaigning, that the last thing you want to do is anger the pensioners because they vote and they hold it against you.
But the extraordinary thing about that was that on this programme, we had a conversation. I remember you were sitting there, I was sitting here, and you were saying how they should probably just focus the removal on the wealthier taxpayers. And you give it to everybody, and then you might claw the money back on wealthier pensioners.
Through the tax system.
Through the tax system.
A bit like they do with child benefit now.
Yeah, I remember you saying that, and we discussed this. 11 months later, 10 months later, that's what they're going to do.
That's the speculation.
We think.
That's the speculation.
I think they're going to find it very hard to do anything else, because I don't think, you know, this idea that they are going to just raise the threshold and have a system which can say, well, it's going to be paid to some pensioners, but not these pensioners.
It's too fiddly.
It won't work.
It's fiddly.
So what they'll do is they'll give it to everybody and then raise taxes on some.
And people think, you know, they can't believe it when I say it, but it's true. The computer systems that administer this are so creaky and so old. That's the only way they can do it, really.
I know.
Yeah, that's going to be the detail, isn't it? That actually, you know, because you've always said that means testing is incredibly complex.
It's very hard.
Particularly with that system.
But also the politics of it.
I know, and I know people probably think that, like, in government, it's all like a sort of James Bond movie where you've all got these amazing sort of, you know, computer tech systems, but it's not at all. You're dealing with computer systems that go back 20, 30 years sometimes.
Do you think the Chancellor will announce it next Wednesday?
I think so. I wasn't expecting it. I thought she'd try and wait until when she does this budget in the autumn. But she did this speech yesterday, I think in Rochdale, where she said pensioners are going to get something this winter, which means presumably she's going to give the details last week.
So I think she has to make an announcement because the uncertainty was a political risk for the government, frankly.
Well, you know, once you've decided it's done you damage and you've U-turned, then I guess you want to mitigate the damage as much as possible by clarifying.
Bad U-turns can be very damaging.
Bad U-turns can be
if
very
you're going to
damaging.
do a U-turn,
it's going to be clean.
Do
the
it cleanly
U-turn.
and well.
If you're driving down the road and you think, I'm going to do a U-turn, you don't sit in the middle of the road for 3 months and then think, why don't I do 12 turns? Do a U-turn.
No, that's right. You get knocked over if you do that.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Although, as somebody who takes about 12 times to do any kind of U-turn, I probably will end up doing that. Right, shall we talk Putin and Trump, this conversation which has not calmed anybody down in terms of being fearful of the situation with Russia, isn't it? So he had a conversation back in May, around the 19th, I think, where he came out saying, this is great, we're going to sort it out. This is Donald Trump and Putin, and they're going to get together, Ukraine and Putin. Didn't happen the way he predicted, and it's all going to be fine. This time he came out, still said it was a good conversation because he's still Donald Trump, but that it doesn't mean that peace is likely any time soon. So that feels like, for a man who promised he could sort it in one day, even he knows this is a worrying time.
So I think, look, with this...
Actually, Colin, why don't we just hear what Donald Trump said after the call?
Yes, sorry, apologies.
Sure.
It was the one, he'd just done the phone call, and I think he says, I've just finished speaking by phone with President Vladimir Putin of Russia. Oh, there he is. The call lasted approximately 1 hour, 50 minutes. We discussed the attack on Russia's docked airplanes by Ukraine and also various other attacks that have been taking place by both sides. It was a good conversation, but not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace. Putin did say, and very strongly, he will have to respond to the recent attack on the airfields. Donald Trump said originally he was going to solve...
In one day.
In the first day.
On the first day.
Now he's doing a running commentary where he says Putin is now going to retaliate. I mean, it is quite wild.
It's wild.
The main fact of this is that I think, to use the sort of words that Donald Trump would use, Putin has done a number on Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump thought that they had a special relationship. I think he thought that he was his sort of buddy and that he could be reasoned with. And I think Putin has completely played Donald Trump. And I think Trump feels very, very upset about it.
Well, I mean, he has, but I mean, that's not great for the world, is it? Because we all want to see peace. We all want to support Ukraine. We cannot pander to the Russians. And by the way, that attack that the Ukrainians launched on Russia earlier this week, the footage of that
is extraordinary.
Isn't it extraordinary? Yeah. It's like something out of a film, actually. It's like something out of Hollywood.
I mean, but that will give. Well, that will obviously severely anger Putin, we know that. Sure. But also, it will give confidence, won't it, you would have thought, to Ukraine, that they can sustain.
Yeah, but this is the problem, because we're not seeing an end in sight. I mean, when Trump came in, there was a lot of... It wasn't just him. I think people thought, this is a new leader, a new way of looking at things, and that there will be some resolution to the conflict.
But the Russians must be furious, because they thought they would squash Ukraine in weeks, if not months.
Absolutely.
And they haven't.
They thought they'd win in 3 days. I mean, I was in cabinet when they invaded.
Yeah.
And, I think the expectation generally was that it would be over, not in a good way, very quickly.
Very quick. But then, of course, we all remember that infamous White House briefing with Zelensky and Donald Trump, where he was trying to say only America can sort this. That attack by Ukraine so successfully right in the heart. Further into the Russia they've got before will make Ukraine will be a kind of a thumbs up to thumbing nose. I mean, trying to avoid using a ruder kind of a
but
phrase.
The problem with that
to Donald Trump and America.
That's right. But the problem with all of this is that there's no end in sight. Every time Ukraine does well, we support that.
Yeah.
But it does mean that the Russians will probably retaliate and will be less likely to come to a peaceful resolution. So there's no end in sight, which is a very bad place to be.
Yeah, that's right, but we can't give in to Russia, can
we? I accept that.
I mean, that's the dilemma we all face, but if we give in to Russia... And we also have
very minimal influence, it feels, acting as the UK
alone. We've got to be honest about that. But that's why we've got to do all we can to continue to support Ukraine, because, look, whether we like it or not, this is on the European mainland, and then Russia will go to another country and another country.
And, today... the 81st anniversary of the D-Day landing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think in my lifetime there's ever been a point where it has felt more fragile, the state of peace in Europe.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. Absolutely.
But I think that's true. But I think the main thing that with Trump and Putin is that I think Trump feels let down by Putin. So the psychology of that, how unpredictable Trump is.
Yeah.
If he's in a bad mood and feels that he's been badly treated, we don't know where that's gonna end up.
Go. Yeah, absolutely.
Should we talk about something we're talking about in the next hour? We're talking to people from the Home Care Association.
Right.
They say these are people who provide care in the home, people who are not in care homes but need regular visits during the day.
Yeah.
So the agencies, essentially, that run it. Yeah.
And who employ the staff, and they're saying that they are being underfunded, they are kind of right on the edge, it's exploitative. The government's line is not, we're going to be making an announcement in the spending review. Their line is that we've launched the Louise Casey review. We started in April and we'll start a national conversation. I mean, once more, in this Parliament, as in the Parliaments when Kwasi, you were in government, and the Parliaments when we were in government, once more we are kicking the question of the funding of social care in care homes, but also in the home, into the long grass. Is that politically sensible for the government?
No, it's not, but it's understandable given that all the solutions to this problem of social care and the care that you get in your home for your frailty, your dementia, or perhaps if you're severely disabled because of illness, often you or the family have to pay for that. A lot of people think it's free. They think it's going to be like the NHS, and it turns out it's not. And the bills rack up, and rack up. It's clearly not a sustainable system. It's clearly not a fair system.
I mean, it's also actually, I mean, just give you one fact which we'll be reporting. A third of local authorities are paying to providers rates below what would be needed to simply pay their minimum wage.
I mean, they're having to basically be illegal these agencies. They have to break the law. And as we know, there's a huge deficit. Sorry, Jonathan. There's a huge deficit of staff. So it's now... We know that the care system's in crisis. We know that. Sure. This, I feel like, is slightly different because always local government is attacked for underfunding. But this is because there's been serious big government underfunding.
That's right.
And now the agencies are just saying, we're packing up. We're going. We can't make it work.
So what used to happen in this world of social care is that, particularly throughout the Conservative years, so and it's happened under all chancellors, frankly, because they always say we want to fund health and care, but they put the money into the NHS side of it, and often the social care side of it gets cut back,
which keeps people out of hospital.
Exactly, and it's now at a tipping point, frankly, and unless you fix this bit of the system, you won't fix the NHS bit because, as you say, people end up going to hospital.
It is politics, but we did try to solve this. I mean, you remember the 2017 election. And in that, the Prime Minister announced a policy that was going to partially fund considerably this issue, and it was labelled the dementia tax.
Then Boris Johnson introduced a national insurance rise.
That's right.
Then Rishi Sunak did a U-turn, pushed by Labour to do a U-turn.
Yeah, Labour...
Don't do the national insurance tax rise.
Exactly.
We're back to square one. Again, I mean, it's not been raised by the opposition. It's not been talked about really by the government. This Casey review is not going to say anything for years.
But that's because, I mean, it's understandable because we started the discussion talking about where's the money coming for the pensioners, where's the money coming for child poverty. This will cost billions and billions of pounds. It's why, actually, you probably have got to get the politicians to put their party political squabbling to one side and agree a deal. Maybe. But the politicians never do that.
They never do that.
Because
it's so long-term. It's so long-term.
What the government proposes has been shot to pieces so many times by the opposition. The various... You talked about national insurance. I remember the dementia tax, which was launched during the campaign and was a disaster. And so politicians are very afraid.
Well, it was politically a disaster, but there were people that were delighted by it. And the problem with the politics of this is, of course, is understandably the money in the healthcare and bracket, in the NHS and the healthcare bracket, goes to the NHS because seeing people sitting waiting for treatment for 24 hours and not getting treatment is very political, whereas it's much more invisible, the disaster.
You're exactly right.
Next week is Carers Week, and I think the focus is going to be largely on the people that keep the system going, which is the unpaid carers. And, of course, they're going to be massively affected by changes to the benefits.
And everybody, at some point in their life, is going to be caring for a mum or a dad, 100%. A husband or a wife, or a brother or a sister, because... We are all living longer, generally, which is a good thing, but as we live longer, we get frailer, we sadly sometimes get dementia, we have a stroke, we can't do things for ourselves. This is just going to be a problem that grows and grows and grows.
I've got a proposal, the opposite of cynicism. And, you know, Baroness Casey, very respected person.
Very impressive person.
But she'll do a review, and we know what it's going to say, which is you need to spend more, and here's how you should spend it. And as you say, it's a political problem. What we need is... the Kwarteng Ashworth review. We need a cross-party report by two people who've been there saying, sort out the politics,
Can
come
we
together.
even forget the report and they just go straight to sorting it out?
Because
I think that's part of the problem. We don't want any more reports.
Trouble is, neither of them in Parliament anymore because they both, they both left.
Could you be hired by somebody?
We'll do that.
We'll come together.
We'll fix it, yeah.
I think by the time we come back,
we'll fix it on here.
I think absolutely.
Okay.
Well, I think it needs more than that, but anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, but we know the problem.
You want a report?
But we know the problem, and the question is, do we get the money? And what we did, Theresa May did in 2017, was essentially try to put the onus on the homeowner, and there was a huge backlash against that. And I think, you know, it's very difficult for whoever's in government to solve this.
Because it's also a lottery, because not everybody is going to get dementia, not everybody is going to have a stroke. So you always think that, well, you know, why should my house be at risk when I want to pass my house on to my kid?
You're going to get old, and you're going to get, and it can happen when you're young.
But that's the problem,
I know. We're all agreeing, aren't we?
Should we talk about skinny jabs?
Well, I was informed by a producer that Kwasi Kwarteng is very keen to talk about skinny jabs.
Yeah, look.
I don't want you to feel like I'm picking on you.
I think you might be. I think you might be. Be careful.
We are reporting warnings today that if you are taking one of these weight loss jabs while you are pregnant, that could be damaging for the baby, and also that if you are taking that while you're on a contraceptive pill, it might actually make the contraception less effective.
Sure. So look, I mean, my general view on this is that it's incredible how quickly a lot of people have adopted these jabs, and they're a kind of, you know, cure-all for obesity and fatness generally. But we don't know what the side effects will be. I mean, that's just an obvious point. If people, you know, the take-up of these jabs has gone up exponentially by 5, 6, 7, whatever times in a short time, you don't know what the effect will be on, you know, vast numbers of people. And we'll only learn that after a few years. And so, in the meantime, you've got to be careful. And I totally understand why people are saying, actually, if you are pregnant or if you're using contraception, you should be cautious about the effect of the jabs.
I mean, I think these jabs are a good thing because we have in society an obesity problem. We have a diabetes problem. There's evidence that these jabs are good also for heart conditions. There's even some evidence emerging that these jabs may have an impact on dementia and Alzheimer's. We're expecting the big medicine companies, the pharmaceutical companies, to create pills in the next few years as well. Of course, there should be ongoing studies. It's not unusual in healthcare for there to be court warnings about whether you're pregnant or trying to get pregnant. But I think, you know, the evidence so far is that these jabs are a good thing. They improve people's health, and we should be in favour of opening up access.
But the point about it, that I was trying to make, is that the numbers of people that are adopting these things...
It's about 1.5 million on that.
No, but it's gone up, you know, hugely, exponentially.